My biggest pet peeve is when people say I don't have time, because you always have time to, you make time for things that you want to do. So, I'm able to do as many things as I do because I use all of my time.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Tripod presented by Transition. I'm your host, Alex Warmoth, and today I'm joined by Meg Dirito. Meg is a professional triathlete and Ironman competitor, former Division I swimmer at Bucknell University, and an NCAA and Olympic trials qualifier. She balances elite level triathlon training and racing with her work as an emergency veterinarian and life as a parent, earning her pro license in 2023. Meg, welcome to the Tripod.
Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be on and talk all things life and triathlon.
Awesome. um, Yeah, I guess just to get started, I'd love to learn more about how you got into swimming. I think at your recent Chattanooga race, you were in the front of the pack and had a great time on your swim. And I would just love to learn how you first got into swimming.
So I actually started sports at the age of 3 and I started in ballet. So I've always done sports. Ballet was a little slow for me, so my parents put me in gymnastics. And then I did do gymnastics until ninth grade. I was a level 10 gymnast, so we trained a lot. It became a lot, and I told my parents I wanted to try something different. And swimming, I was always fascinated by it. I loved it. Uh, my mom, she said no. She said, she said after everything we've done with gymnastics and traveling the US that she didn't want to go me to go into like another sport that was so dedicated. But me being me, I found a ride. So I told her, I said, "Don't worry, Mom. I joined the swim team, but I have a ride. You don't have to take me." So that was ninth grade. And I never looked back since. After that, she was kind of like, all right, and I fell in love with it. And I knew how to swim, but a lot of what I did was just muscling through because I was a gymnast. So my stroke was not where it could be, but it was powerful. So I learned a lot from then on. That's kind
Awesome.
of how it started.
When you first got into it, did you think about kind of racing and getting into it more professionally, or was that just something that happened naturally?
It happened naturally. I joined the local swim team, and that is the team that my kids swim on now, actually. Um,
Awesome.
and the more I trained, the more I swam, I realized that maybe I could be good at it. Like I said, my stroke was not pretty. I muscled through a lot of it, but I had some great coaches along the way that really just helped me believe that maybe I could be good. So I continued to believe in them, and they continued to believe in me, and I just kind of developed into passion. And as I got faster, now granted, I started in ninth grade, so colleges start looking at you at your junior year. And so like I started to have some colleges look at me, and again, my parents believed in me. They talked to the college coaches and they were like, give her a chance. And the Jerry Foley from Bucknell, he gave me a chance. I grew so much in college swimming. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
How yeah, I'm curious having that support, how important was having that support to your success in swimming?
It's so important. And I think that goes for any sport. You can't do sport alone. You always need, that person or that support, whether it's like a family, a friend, teammates who are gonna push you. And because you're gonna have all these days where you doubt yourself and you're like, what am I doing? This is crazy. And your support is going to like try to set you back on track. You are amazing. You can do this, and I don't think anyone can get through sport without a support person. I think it's
Hmm.
important.
Yeah, especially swimming. I know there's, relays and stuff, but a lot of times that can feel like a solo sport, and triathlon as well is a
Hmm.
lot of time on your own. How do you how do you sort of curate that group? Did it just happen naturally, or did you have to put in kind of effort to curating those relationships and sort of taking advantage of that support?
A lot of my support has always come from my family. So they've always been there for me. My mom and dad, I remember swimming in college, and not once did I look up in the stands and they weren't there. They were
Hmm.
always there. So they saw every race, they traveled, and they were my support. I had good races, bad races, but they were always there to pick me up and move forward. And even when I met like my husband and got married, he was always there too,
Hmm.
so I think, and a lot of sport too is finding friends along the way, like racing triathlon. The girls are amazing. They're supportive, they're my friends, and we're always there for each other. We're there at the beginning of the race, or we're there at the end of the race, and they pick you up when you're down. And, I think it's just your journey and who you find along the way to help you.
Right, right. No, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I'm curious, what has swimming taught you?
Wow. Swimming has taught me a lot, as gymnastics as well, because that's kind of where my background came from. It taught me um, how to work as a teammate. It taught me dedication and discipline. There are many days where you don't want to go, but you show up anyway, and whether you had a good practice or not, it's that continual dedication to a craft and to wanting to be better at it and just being a student of what you're doing. It taught me balance. So it taught me how to do schoolwork and succeed at that and also swim or do gymnastics. I learned a lot through all of my sports and my journey. And that everything I learned and now I try to teach my kids, because they're kind of going through it too. So lots of lessons.
Sure. That's great. I'm curious. So, okay, so you started with gymnastics, you got into swimming, got into Bucknell University and were swimming for their team. How did you go from that to finding triathlon?
Yes. So when I graduated from Bucknell, I got accepted into veterinary school and I lived on the islands for 3 years. So I did a lot of open water swimming there. I was actually huge into board surfing. So I
Hmm,
surf after class every day. So
nice.
the water has always been my happy place. Whether I was surfing or swimming or I'm scuba certified too. So deep water adventure diver. So I did a lot of
Wow.
that. And then on the island, the weather was always so good. I thought, hey, I'm going to go out for a run. This looks amazing. I'm going to check it out. And it just became like a natural habit for me to go for a run after practice or after classes every day. So I
Hmm.
actually got pretty good at running, relatively speaking. I'm not a runner. I'm a swimmer. I'm a not a land animal, but you know, I got better. And then my last year of vet school, I go to a state school. So I went to NC State and I met my husband, and he actually cycled for NC State. So he taught me how
Nice.
to ride a tri bike, and I was not very good. So, so I kind of put it all
Did you
together.
did you start on a tri bike or did you ever do like road biking or anything?
No, I started on a tri bike.
Wow, went straight into a tri bike.
Straight
That's
into
adventurous.
Yep, he put me on a tri bike, and I remember very vividly for this day. The first time I got on and clipped in, I fell into a bush, and he laughed so hard at me, and I was stuck in this bush clipped to my bike. And ever since then, I never let him live that day down. I was like, remember that first time that I rode a bike and you laughed at me?
Wow.
I was
Just
like,
kind
well,
of
now
threw
look
you
at
in the
me.
deep end.
Pretty much, yeah. But no, he taught me a lot. So he's a very good biker.
Okay, so you have your husband to thank for introducing you to cycling and
Yeah.
okay, so how did you go from that to racing your first triathlon?
So I dabbled a little bit in it when I was down at NC State just for fun. They have like actually it was when we moved to South Carolina, they had the South Carolina series. So I thought, all right, that looks cool. Let's try it. We did it for fun, but I never was like super serious. And then we ended up having kids. So I actually didn't work out for 3 years at all. Nothing.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I I was a little overwhelmed and I did buy this book, this triathlon book, which I still have. And after 3 years, I picked it up and I was like, I remember this. This was fun. So I actually signed up for a local race, and that was in I want to say 2016, maybe.
Hmm.
And then from there, I was hooked. I was obsessed. So, and here I am.
What hooked you about triathlon as opposed to swimming or running individually?
It was challenging that it was, I mean, my first race I ever did um, in 2016 was a local race, and I live in Pennsylvania, and the hills were just horrendous, and I was on a road bike, so not aero, like, and I was like, wow, that was so hard. I was like, this is cool. I want to do this. I think it was just a challenge and being out there with all these like-minded people that liked doing what I did. So I felt like it was a challenge and it was fun and it was something I wanted to get good at.
Awesome. And then I guess at that point as well, had you heard of Ironman at that point? Did you ever think about, racing professionally? Or I'm just really curious how all that came about.
Yeah, so at that time I did my first local race and then I started to sign up for like more local series races and I knew about Ironman, but I thought, wow, a 70.3 is crazy. I don't know if that's something that, I can do. So I did a lot of Olympics and sprints. Um, and then I thought as I got better, I was like, all right, I'm gonna do a 70.3. And that was in 2018. And I was like, well, maybe if I'm going to do this, I should get a coach. So I
Hmm.
did get a coach. And as we worked together, he had hinted like, hey, I think that you could be really good at this. Have you ever thought about trying to race professionally? And I was kind of like, haha, very funny. You know, I'll keep training. I hear you, but I don't think that's possible. So then when I raced my first 70.3 and it was at Eagle Man, I ended up getting a world championship spot, and then I kind of thought, oh, well, maybe he's not wrong. Maybe I could be good. So I started to sit in the back of my mind, and I think it sat for a year or two as I got better, and then I just like, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna go for this. If it happens, it happens. If not, then I'll just keep doing what I love. And
Hmm.
so, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know there's a lot of age group triathletes out there who have a dream of going pro or want to place in a race or get a championship slot. What advice do you have for them?
I always tell my kids it's show up, show up on the good days, show up on the bad days, show up on the days that you don't want to show up, you know, because it's consistency and it's time in, and it just seems dedicated to what you want to do. You're not always gonna have the best workout. You're not gonna always push the most power or run the fastest. It's your consistency. And yeah, some people are talented, but if they don't show up, they're not gonna get anywhere. So it's just being consistent and being dedicated. I think that's what's important.
How, one thing I've really admired about you is how you're able to balance family, work, professional racing, training.
Well,
How do you keep consistency and keep that discipline for your racing with such a busy life?
well, I think it all boils down to support, true. And that comes from many different levels. I mean, even my work is supportive. They let me work out on my lunch break, so there's support there and they allow me the flexibility to make my own schedule, pick my own days to work. They know that I travel a lot. And then of course my family working together. And I think it's also important that my kids see, balance. That if mom can do it, if mom can do, emergency work and also get her training in, they can go to school. They can do instruments and swim at a high level as well. So I think it takes a village. I really do. I wouldn't be able to do it alone.
Right. How big of a motivator is your kids to your your professional racing?
They're my idols. They really are. And people say, "Who's your idol?" I say my kids. I really, really admire them. Even at such a young age, like they're so dedicated. They wake up, their nutrition is on point. Like, yes, we've talked about this year after year, and they've learned a lot. They show up or they go to practice, even when they're tired. They get their schoolwork done, and I watch them race and I watch them grow, as the years go by. And it's just their growth is amazing because they've been so dedicated, and they motivate me because I'm like, well, if they can do all this, I can do all this. So I think we're motivators for each other, you know?
Right. It's like this
So
cycle of, you're motivating them, but they're motivating you, and it's just
yeah,
this flywheel.
absolutely. Yeah, I watch them race and I'm in complete awe because, I've seen the growth, and they have dreams and they have aspirations as I do too, and I watch them chase that and I watch them get closer and closer and closer, to what they want, and
Hmm.
that inspires me to continue to keep doing what I love, to chase my dreams too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, one thing you mentioned, showing up, inevitably, sometimes life does get in the way. Maybe you get an injury or, something happens. How do you deal with those things that come up, and how do you still sort of get through your training,
Yeah.
despite those things that do come up?
I think that it's all about adapting. So like, in December, I had some like surgeries and I wasn't able to train how I'd wanted. So I adapted and I did what I could do. I didn't just sit there for a month and say, oh, I can't train. I said I found the things that I could do. I could walk. I think I walked like 40 miles a week. It killed me to walk. It was boring, but like that's what I could do, and I could do strength and I could do, certain things. So I made my schedule. It was different than what I was used to, but I adapted. So I think adapting to your situation and making the best of what you can do, is the way to go about it.
One question on that, there's a lot of data out there nowadays, watches that can track your sleep and your heart rate variability and, apps for nutrition, things like that. So we're sort of in a world where we have a lot of data about our training,
Mhm.
but I'm curious, especially in these situations where maybe your training's off track or you have an injury, how do you how do you think about training based on metrics versus training on just your own feel of your body?
So, when I talk to my coaches, I always, number one for me is going off of feel. I think I know myself better than any data or metric knows me. I use the data and metrics as support. So like I have a Whoop band, and I can be like, this is how I feel. I wonder what Whoop says. Does it agree? Because, I know how I feel. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. I take it with a grain of salt. So I think that knowing yourself and knowing your own body is the most important. And using that data and metrics as like support, should be secondary.
How do you develop that feel?
Then consistency. After you've trained consistently for, it's been like 8 years, I mean, I know my rate of perceived exertion. I know how I feel. I know when something's not right. It's just consistency and knowing yourself. Like you've worked out so much. You know what certain workouts feel like. You know when you wake up in the morning and you're sore. You know what all of that feels like. And you know what all of that means. So just listening to yourself. Like if you get in a workout and you're like, you're supposed to do a VO2 max and you're like, yeah, my body says no today, adapting and making it a recovery run. Like that's okay. It's just not today. That's not going to work. I hear what the schedule says. I hear what the coach says, but my body says, no, this is not what's going to happen today, So just
Hmm.
adapting. It's huge. And a lot of people look at that as failure. They say, oh, I failed my workout today. I couldn't make it. No, that's a failure. That's your body. That's growth. Your body worked hard, you did something the other day, and your body's not ready yet. That's not failure. You just have to adapt.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah. I'm curious as well. So, racing and training as an age group athlete and then racing and training as a professional athlete, what was that sort of transition like?
Uh, I think I suffered from imposter syndrome for a while because I felt like I didn't belong there. These girls are amazing and they're just they're I'm in awe. Like you walk in, why am I here? Like I'm in awe, because they're so talented. And granted, everyone has their own strengths. Like so and so is a wicked runner and so and so is a good swimmer. You know that. So the field is a lot smaller. So you know everybody, you know what they're good
Mm,
at, you know what they're gonna do. As opposed to like age group, you have a couple hundred people, you don't know everybody.
right.
So I felt imposter syndrome, yeah, I earned my spot here, but do I really belong here? Now
Mm,
granted, I am a bit older than a lot of those racing. So again, you're like, am I crazy for being here? But at the same time, it's like I earned my spot here when I got here, so why not? Those girls inspire me to be the best version of myself. So, just keep building and keep getting stronger, you know.
hmm
But it was definitely a hard adjustment for sure.
Sure. And then in terms of training itself, how has the training volume changed, or has your strategy for training changed at all? Like when you were racing for, an age group races versus professional races?
No, my training stayed the same as far as like the amount that I've trained. I think now, just based on what I've learned, I value recovery a lot more,
Mm,
just because of I seem to, as when I race professional, my load seems to be a lot higher than maybe it was. So
hmm
recovery is huge. If I want to still put out 20 to 25 hours a week, like you have to get good sleep, get good rest. So I'm hyper focused on that. I think that's important. But I mean, I've always been a hard worker. I'm a workhorse. My coach is always like, she's a workout. Of course, if I don't have enough work, I'm like, you need to put something on my schedule. That's not enough. You know, so that has never changed. That's just who I am. I wanna work. I wanna put in the work. Mhm. So I still am the same person I was
hmm
racing age group. I still have the same goals, the same mindset, you know, to grow and to be the best that I can be.
What would you say is the most effective forms of recovery for you and things that you incorporate, on a weekly basis or even a daily basis to help you with that high training load?
What's the most important for me is one is nutrition. Nutrition is huge. And I feel like a lot of people don't get that correctly. They're like, I'm not getting faster. I can't do my workouts. Well, what are you eating? Like how are you fueling? Because that's how you fuel your body. So if you can't get your nutrition right, you're not going to get your workouts right. You know? And so I'm huge into nutrition. I've been working with Fuelin. They're great. They tell me my targets, which is amazing. So now I know my numbers.
hmm
But I'm huge on like fueling my body before and after and during, so I can do the next workout. They do three workouts a day, so I need to keep fueling. I can't just like have one thing and hope that I can make it through.
Right.
And then my second thing is sleep. Sleep is huge. If you don't get your sleep, your body can't do it. And I am an avid go to bed at the same time, very scheduled, wake up similar time, try to get at least 8 hours every day, which I do. That's huge for me. Now, granted, there are other modalities like, your recovery, like mobility apps and your massage guns and all of that, but that means nothing if you can't get the other two right. You know,
Mm,
you could do all those things, but if you don't have good nutrition and sleep, it's not worth buying.
hmm
You have to get those correct first. Those are just add-ons.
Totally. Yeah, that's been a struggle for me is keeping the sleep consistency and then nutrition as well. I feel like there's a lot of information out there,
Yeah,
and it's hard to kind of piece through, especially when you're starting to increase training load or doing, three different sports at once.
yeah.
Are there any, I imagine nutrition's pretty personalized, but are there anything nutrition wise you've learned over the years from your coaches and your experience that, that maybe, the average person who's not super into it might overlook that could really help them with nutrition?
Yeah, I think that hitting your protein levels is huge. A lot of people are very, very low on protein levels, and those are your building blocks for your muscle recovery,
Hmm.
and you'd be surprised. Like, it's always a daily challenge for me after, talking to Fuelin, and my target's 150 grams a day. That's hard, that's very hard, and, so just focusing on like like when you eat like the what do you have on your plate? Do you have a protein? Do you have a carb? Do you have a, staying away from like you get enough sugars in your training. So you don't really need that in your, your daily meals. You need your carbs, you need your proteins, some fats, but and just paying attention to like how you're putting your meals together,
Hmm.
So yeah, I'd say hitting protein levels is tough. It's a daily game for me. Like how can I eat more protein and not eat more chicken? You know what I mean? There's ways to
Yep.
get it. Um, and I am a huge advocate of organic all natural, so I don't eat prepackaged stuff. If it comes in a box or it's fake or I don't know the ingredients, I won't eat it. It is me making my meals, with all natural stuff because I want to fuel my body the best that I can. And then it's an ongoing thing. I dove into nutrition a couple years ago, just kind of researching ingredients and knowing what to stay away from. So it's a
Hmm.
learning. It's definitely been a learning passion for me. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Do you have any go-to fuel or snacks for your long indoor rides?
So I love all of Good Life stuff. I love all of their carb mixes and their electrolytes, So I'm an all liquid fueler. I don't
Hmm.
love like bars. Well, I do love bars. I like the Agile bars, but I don't I usually eat them like after, but during when I'm
Hmm.
working out, I'm pretty much I hit my levels in liquids,
Hmm.
basically. And that's where I am with racing too. Everything is in my bottle.
Now, is that personal preference, or when you're racing professionally, do most people choose liquids just for digestion and things like that?
I think a lot of the pros are strictly nutrition or like liquid nutrition because it's easy to grab and fill, but also just knowing like my GI, I'm very sensitive. So I know like what works for me.
Mhm.
And then also not having to worry about like carrying extra stuff on the bike, it's in your
Right.
bottles. So it's just a lot easier.
Very cool. I'm also curious. So yeah, you mentioned sort of imposter syndrome and just a lot of inspiring athletes in the professional field. What's been your biggest surprise going from age group to professional racing?
Prize would probably be so in age group racing, I was so used to finishing like in the front. It was like I want to get that, top three spots, top five overall, so that was like became, I did that more and more. But now racing professional, like, I am like more towards the middle back. I am a swimmer, so I do come out in the front,
Mhm.
so that has been surprising to me just how I put my race together, and really it is more evident on people like racing professional what people's strengths are and not. So
Mhm.
unfortunately I'm not a great runner, so my day just kind of gets harder as I go. So like I start out great in the swim and it's always been a constant learning thing for me, like how do I get faster in the bike? How do I perfect my run? So it's a work in progress for me. I mean, everybody's learning and trying to get faster.
Mhm. Yeah, I think for me yeah, that challenge you mentioned is just sort of part of the fun. There's always something you can improve.
Yeah.
I've I've talked to a lot of age group triathletes and even people who've never done a triathlon, and one of the things that I hear a lot is either they're afraid of swimming and they're it's just big unknown, or they're trying to improve their swimming, but they're just really having a hard time improving their times or getting a water feel. What advice would you have to, triathletes or anyone who wants to do a triathlon but is a little intimidated by swimming or is struggling with improving their swimming?
Yeah. So swimming is a sport of technique. It is not, it is all technique and it's how your stroke is in the water. So if you're doing something wrong consistently, like you're not, your touch is off or you're not going to get faster. Going faster, like doing really, really fast sets when you're training, if your stroke is wrong, is not going to make you faster. What's going to make you faster is learning the techniques and the mechanics of the freestyle stroke to help you become more efficient in the water. So, learning how to make your catch efficient so that you're pulling more water, that's going to make you faster. Not doing 1050s as fast as you can, So, a lot of people, it's a misconception that they need to go fast in swimming to get faster, but they actually need to slow down and go slower. And they need to get their mechanics right. And that's through like constant analyzing videos. Take videos of yourself, watch your stroke, watch YouTube. How can you fix it? And that's kind of where a coach comes in too, because they look at your stroke and they say, see right here, see what you did on this catch. You need to do this. You need to fix it. Because sometimes you can't see yourself swimming. So you need to break down those mechanics. And that's going to be how you get faster. It's
Hmm.
just learning the mechanics of swimming. And it's tough. And even my college coach told me, he said, like I said, when I went to college, I muscled through everything. He said, I am going to make you faster, but we are going to be very slow for the next 6 months. You're going to get
Mm.
slower. And I trusted him and I said, okay, whatever I need to do. And he completely fixed my stroke to something completely different. And then that's when I ended up making NCAAs and trials because I learned how to swim. I know that
Wow.
was a long-winded answer,
No, no,
but
that's great. No, I mean, I feel like biking and running, at least early on, if you're somewhat new to it, you can see some progress pretty quickly. You can see, okay, you're
yeah,
getting faster. You can go 1 mile, you can go 2 miles, 3 miles. Whereas I've seen swimming, it's a little, I feel like that initial ramp up period is harder because there's so much
yeah,
technique to
cool.
learn. I mean, would you say if someone were hiring a coach or wanting to put consistent effort into watching videos and recordings, how long do you expect it to see results with technique?
Well, I mean, I'm still tweaking my stroke. So like I am still seeing results because like working on technique. But like if you thinking like immediate results, it takes weeks, if not months, to ingrain. See, the goal of swimming is to ingrain the correct technique into your muscle memory, so you don't have to think about it anymore. So that takes a long time, and that's consistently doing that correct technique over and over and over and over again through drilling, slowing down, and then that's when it becomes muscle memory, and then that's when it becomes faster because you don't have to think about it. So
Mm.
it's not going to be like, I'll fix my stroke in a week. I'm going to be faster at my race next week. Like that doesn't necessarily correlate. You
Hmm.
have to keep working at it. And then eventually it's going to become smoother and then you start working on something else. So it's not an immediate result. It takes,
Hmm.
and then you have to put in the effort. You have to go to the pool. You have to do it consistently.
Right.
Yeah. You can't just go to the pool twice a week and say I'm fixing my stroke. Like, and that's another misconception from a lot of age groupers is they're like, why am I not getting faster? And I'm like, well, how often are you swimming?
Mm.
If you're swimming twice a week, you're not going to get faster, because you don't have enough time. It's time in too. Like you don't have enough time in the pool to do the drills to correct the stroke. So it's just time in. And that goes for everything, bike and run. It's time in.
Right. Do you ever do any sort of dry land swim training or technique related things outside of the pool, or is it really you just got to spend time in the pool and that's where you're going to get all the benefits?
So I do dry land, I do mobility every day, and a lot of it is swim specific. So I do 20 minutes of mobility every single day. I never miss a day. I have a shoulder like a pre-swim routine that my coach gives me, and that just kind of pre-warms up, prevent muscle injury in my shoulders, so band work and that kind of thing. So that is an everyday thing. I mean, I swim every day, and I do that. It's
Hmm.
just important.
That is fascinating. Would you consider that part of recovery, or do you actually consider mobility sort of something else? Is it more part of training, or is it more part of recovery? I'm just curious how you think about doing that daily mobility.
It's both. It's mobility. It prevents injury because if you are more mobile, and you're able to move better and have better angles with your shoulders, and you're going to prevent injury. It's also recovery too. So there are some mobility things that you can do for recovery. So, mixing it up and saying, all right, I'm going to do 20 minutes of mobility, but I'm going to do 10 minutes of post cycling mobility, and I'm going to do 10 minutes of just, free swim, so you can mix it up a little bit because there's so many mobility exercises you can do, and they all have different functions.
Hmm.
So it's kind of tailoring your mobility to what you're going to be doing for that day, like what is your training. And then just making it consistent. I put it on my schedule every day, 25 minutes of mobility. It's a non-negotiable for me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I guess now thinking backing up a bit, and kind of going back to professional racing, how do you sort of think about your training and your racing like at a yearly level? Like, do you think about it, do you sort of plan ahead for your races for the whole year and then you structure your training around that, or is it a little more ad hoc? I'm just curious how you think about, picking races and then planning your training around that for a year.
So it's really tough for me to plan races because my kids compete at such a high level. So we are traveling a lot for them as well. And there are certain months of the year that I cannot race because it's championship month for us, and we're racing every weekend. So I only do small little, like 3 months at a time, what I'm going to be doing for racing. I can't plan my whole year because with swimming, there's potential for like, qualifying for nationals for my kids, or even higher up, the pro series for them. So that sometimes is up in the air, so for me, just scheduling, like I schedule April, May, and June, and that's it. And
Hmm.
then kind of go from there. And we do have that luxury in the pro field to kind of enter a race at the last minute just because of, how we feel and training and whatnot. So we do have that
Right.
luxury. So yeah, I can't plan the whole year. I wish I could, but and a lot of times I say I'm going to do certain races and then it pops up that I can't,
Mhm.
so I just wait to sign up last minute. I mean, there
Sure.
are some there are some gravel races I'm racing this year that I have already registered for, and I did
Okay.
that in January. So, so that gravel is a little bit different than the trial.
Right. Right. Very cool. How do you mentioned, yeah, kind of picking races, or if you get injured or something, not doing a race. There's a lot, myself included, there's athletes who are really looking forward to a race, and then like the week before, something happens, maybe you got a stomach bug or something, or maybe you do the race and DNF, or you just didn't do as well as you thought you would. How do you handle, bad races?
Hmm. I mean, we do have the luxury to pull out of a race 2 weeks before the race, because they'll always send us an email and say, declare your intent if you're not going to come. So I do have a big leeway to see like how my ramp up for that race has been going. And if it's like terrible, or I haven't gotten any sleep, or we've been traveling with the kids, like I have that luxury to like drop out, not to, because usually when I have something set in my mind that I'm going to do, I'm gonna go all in. I'm gonna do it. But I mean, with bad races, I give myself a day. All right, I had a bad race. You can be upset about it, but by 24 hours, I do not allow myself to get down on it anymore. I tell myself it's time to move on. It's been 24 hours. There are more races, and not everyone's going to have a great day, so let's move on. I start looking forward to what's next and how I can improve.
Do you ever, in your career, have you ever done sort of like race reports or, sort of really analyze your race and figure out what you want to do better next time, or does that kind of just happen naturally for you?
So I always analyze the data with my coaches and we talk about where I may have fell short or what went well. But as far as like social media public race reports, I am not one for race reports just because I give little blurbs on how the race went, but there's so much to it that I feel like I just can't get it into words or it'd be so long. So usually just have that conversation with my coaches and have a game plan. And then I kind of keep my social media race reports to the minimum. The highlights usually, you know.
Sure.
I mean, people know if I had a bad day. They know my times. They know I didn't, if I didn't do well on the run. Yes, I did not do well on the run. I don't need to say that again.
Right.
I try to stick to the highlights when it comes to like social media.
Sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So you also mentioned gravel racing. Is that, you know, are you starting to look for something beyond triathlon, or is this, it sounds like your whole career you've really loved endurance sports. You love open water swimming, you love long distance triathlon, you mentioned gravel racing. This kind of general theme of endurance. I guess where do you see your career over the next couple years?
So I love swimming. That's my passion. So my you will always see me racing open water. And you'll always see me racing in the pool. I have full intent on racing open water till I'm like 80. So I mean I love it. That's where I belong. So I have a lot of like ocean swims. My daughter and I are going to try to qualify for the World Championships this year. It'll be in the
Oh wow.
Dominican Republic. So she's going to try to do the 2K and I'll try to do the 5 and the 10K. I have
Wow.
high hopes of doing some channel swims. So the New York, the 20 Bridges and Catalina is definitely on my list of things to swim. Gravel racing I started last year on a whim. I actually won a lottery to race Gravel Worlds, and
Oh
they flew
cool.
me out there and supported me. I didn't have a gravel bike, so I asked a friend if I could borrow his bike. And luckily we were the same size, so it worked out perfect. And absolutely fell in love with biking again at that race while I was out there. I don't know what it was. It was different than triathlon. It was different vibe, a different kind of race, a different kind of connection. And I fell in love with it. And so I am going to be doing a lot of gravel racing this year. I already have 4 races uh, in April, May, and June that I'll be doing. And I wanted to challenge myself, so I'll be at Unbound racing the 200 miler.
Oh
Um,
wow.
so I'm excited about that. I love biking. I actually think I might like gravel biking better than triathlon biking, just because it's different. I love the climbs in the mud and and it's a lot safer too. So in a couple of years, as far as like triathlon, will I still be racing? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know where it will take me. I guess we'll just have to I play it year by year and see. I follow my heart. So wherever my heart is and what I want to do, that's what I do. I feel
Hmm.
like a lot of people are like, oh, I'm a professional triathlete. I have to do all triathlons, but that's not how I live my life. I live my life by my passions and what I like. And my schedule is filled and so different because I like so many things that I don't want to box myself into just one thing.
Hmm.
So you'll see me
That's
do a bunch
awesome.
of different things.
That's awesome. What's involved with qualifying for the open water championships? That sounds that'd be really cool if you and your daughter are able to do that together. That sounds like a super exciting goal.
Yeah, so I qualified last year in 2025 for it was held in Dubai, and basically you have to get top 10 finish in your distance. So the distances are a 2K, a 5K, and a 10K. I qualified in the 2K and the 10K. However, I did not go to Dubai. It was a week after I had raced, and I just wasn't ready to fly to Dubai. just talking to my family, and we had said, in 2026, that'll be our goal. We're going to go. And my daughter loves open water swimming as well. She's actually really, really fast. And so she said, I want to qualify too in the 2K, maybe the 5K, and then we'll go together. And I said, that sounds great. So that's
Hmm.
kind of our goal. And it's in the Dominican Republic in November.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow. That's exciting. That sounds like, what we were talking about earlier about the sort of motivation flywheel, sort of motivating
Mhm.
each other now, like potentially going to the same country and racing together. I mean,
Mhm.
that's super exciting.
Yeah, and we've actually always raced open water together. We taught her when she was 8 to swim open water. Her first distance was a mile. And so my husband and I like put her in the middle and we each swam on each side of her and guided her through the mile. By the time she was 9, she was swimming the mile by herself and she completed her first 2 mile swim by herself when late 9 years old.
Sure.
Yeah, so now she is amazing at open water swimming. I actually think she's really, really good at the waves and the ocean. She is on the races that I say were terrible. She loved it. So, I admire her fearlessness and her tenacity there, and she's just not afraid to go out there by herself. So,
Right. That's
and
great.
of course, I'm swimming, and the whole time I'm thinking, is she okay? Is she okay? Is she okay? As a mom, you're like, I'm supposed to be swimming and I'm racing, but all I can think about is my daughter and wondering if she's okay out there. Of course,
Oh,
so.
wow. That is awesome. I heard about it recently. I don't know if you've heard of swim run.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I've never done one, but I thought it was fascinating. It's like you're like, if I understand it correctly, you're sort of like tethered together and you like do the race in tandem. Or maybe there's different variations, but have you ever thought about doing one of those?
yeah. I actually did one, not last year, but the year before. I did it by myself. I didn't do a tandem one.
Okay.
It was super fun. I got to swim with shoes and paddles on. So I
Okay.
love that. It was a different dynamic. So like you run through the woods and then you go back and you swim with your shoes on. You can throw your paddles on. Once you get out, you take your paddles and you hook them back to like you have something on their side, and then you keep doing that. So it ends up being like something crazy, like 20 miles or something like that.
Oh
So
wow.
super fun. I had a blast. I loved it. I got lost a little bit, but yeah, I would do it again.
Awesome. Yeah, it's there's so many different like gravel racing, open water swimming, swim run, different triathlon distances. There's a whole world of fun opportunities out there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I say you shouldn't pigeon your hole into one thing. So
Right.
if you're a triathlete, you can run, you can bike, and you can swim. There's so many things you can do,
Right.
and they're all fun and they're all different.
I guess one question on that, I guess even thinking about all these different disciplines that you've raced in, do you ever incorporate strength training into your training, or how does that fit into what you do?
So I strength train, meaning like lifting weights right now in the off season, 2 to 3 times a week. And then I do swim band work, which is still strength training. I do that twice a week. I'll taper off when I start to race. When I'm racing, it's harder to lift because your body is just sore. So I'd say around March, I'll probably stop lifting and just do band work and continue to do the band work throughout the year. But yeah, I think that in the off season, it's important to get strong. And even as me, as I get older, it's important to be strong. So
Right.
yeah, I think it's important.
And how do you, I guess one thing I've personally struggled with is figuring out how to not disrupt my swim, bike, run training with strength training if I'm lifting too heavy or lifting too much. Maybe that's compromising
Mhm.
my run workout that I need to do. How
Yeah.
do you balance those and make sure your strength training doesn't affect your other training negatively?
So it depends on how many workouts you're doing per day. So like if I do 2 or 3 workouts per day and I'm strength training, I won't do all like VO2 max workouts. It'll be like my VO2 max like in the morning. So I've got that done. Then I'll do my strength training with a skills and technique swim and a easy Z2 run. So
Mm.
it is balancing it so that when you lift afterwards, if you're sore, you don't have to, perform at those different, Z3, Z4, Z5. So it's just, you have to think out your workouts and strategically place them where it makes sense. Like you don't want to lift and then go do a 2 hour VO2 max bike. Like that's just not going to work out,
Right.
you know? So it's looking at the week as a whole. And I always do this. I analyze my week and put things appropriately where they would fit and make sense,
Hmm.
based on when I'm working, swim meets, like, and everything is placed for a reason. It's strategic. And I then arrange my day based on the time that I have and what needs to get done.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's just a lot of planning.
Sure. I
Yeah.
guess as part of that planning, and I guess just determining what workouts to do, do you ever reference, what other pros are doing? Like I know there's, Christian Blumenfeld and sort of the Norwegian method, and there's obviously everyone kind of has their own different style, but I think a lot of age groupers look at pros as maybe they have some secret methods or maybe they have some specific style they do. But I'm curious your perspective on that, and like whether they all do their own thing, or it's really just about that showing up and consistency at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think all the pros do their own thing because we know what it's taken for us to get there. So we all have our own way of training and our own, and we all have different time management too. Some of the pros have kids, some don't have kids, And so I don't think that we try to mimic anybody else's training. We do our own. Yeah, occasionally I'll text one of my friends and be like, "Hey, I did this terrible workout today," and they'll be like, "No one, you know." So, but we all just focus on ourselves and what it takes for us to what we need, you know, like, and some of the pros need more running versus swimming or, so it's very, very individual. There's no right way. There's no wrong answer. It's just tailored to that individual.
Yeah, you mentioned, having your schedule pretty packed. Like you always want to be working and, not a lot of extra free time. Do you have any advice for people with busy schedules on how to manage their time effectively?
Yeah, I think it boils down to looking at your week as a whole, so planning. And my biggest pet peeve is when people say I don't have time, because you always have time to, or you make time for things that you want to do. So, I'm able to do as many things as I do because I use all of my time, and even when I had kids and they were little, it was like, they were, how can I do a 10-minute strength set while they're taking that, So like utilizing every time that you have, I mean, I do have the luxury, my kids train for 3 hours in the evening. So that's a big bulk of time for me that I drop them off and I can go work out. But just, knowing, and setting that expectation too, even at work, everyone at work knows that I won't work through my lunch break because I'm going to go work out, and I stick to that. I always leave, I always go work out, and it's just become a habit. Everyone knows that that's how it's going to be. So just making time, finding your gaps and filling them. If you say I only have a 45-minute gap, 45-minute bike is going to be better than not doing anything, so that's
Hmm.
what you have to work with. So just
Hmm.
planning. You got to look at your schedule and you got to plan, where do
Hmm.
I have gaps? What can I do? And not letting yourself come home from work and sit on the couch. You say, no, I'm going to get home. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to get right on that bike and I have an hour workout. Like, just
Hmm.
thing it done. Don't talk yourself out of it. Just
Hmm.
showing up. So, and it's tough. I get it. Trust me, I have terrible days where I don't want to do anything. So,
Yeah, I guess it's maybe goes back to the support group and all these different things that you talked about, but yeah, I think that is such a common occurrence where you just had a long day, you get home, it's cold, and you just want to cozy up and relax. But it does take discipline to spend your time on training or things
mm,
that you care about, your goals. Do you have any other advice on how to kind of hone that discipline?
I think also telling somebody, like for me, when I train, I tell my kids I have an hour bike workout today and I have a 6 mile run. They know what I have, and I have to do it because I can't let them down. I can't let them see that I told them what I had and I did not do it. And
Mm.
they will even hold me accountable too. They're like, "Hey, mom, it's 1 o'clock. We're you're supposed to get on the bike." And I'm like, "You're right, I was." So they definitely hold me accountable and they push me. And I've set that expectation that if I tell you I have something to do, I'm going to do it. It's like if they have practice, I would expect that they know they have practice, so we're going to show up. So I feel like it's my responsibility to set a good example for them. And I can't let them down. And I can't let them see that I say I'm going to do something, but I'm not going to do it. So I tell them what I have and I follow through. So that's just important for me. I want to set a good example for them.
Sure. Yeah, well, I think you're setting a great example, at least from my perspective.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I guess maybe to close out, just reflecting on your journey, any last pieces of advice you would have for any endurance athletes or age group athletes, whether they want to go pro or not, or just really want to explore more of the sport. Any last pieces of advice for them?
Say that just stay in love with what you're doing, and if if you have to love what you're doing to put in the time and the effort. And if there ever becomes a point where you don't love what you do, that's okay. And it's okay to change. And I think that you can always follow your heart and do things that make you happy. Because we only have one life. And if we're doing something we don't love, then you're wasting your time. So if you love triathlon, but then fall in love with open water swimming, we'll do that. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. It just matters that you're happy. So that would be my biggest thing. And I live by that as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, Meg, thank you. This has been a really awesome conversation. I appreciate your time. I know you're super busy, so thank you for sharing these words of wisdom and helping inspire other athletes around the world. So yeah, thanks for coming on and best of luck with all your upcoming races and training. And I'm excited to keep following along.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed being able to talk, and I just want everyone to know that I'm always here. I love talking to people. I love people when people reach out. I love helping people. I love inspiring and motivating. So I am always available for anybody that ever wants to reach out.
Awesome. Do you have any best place for people to reach out or get in contact with you?
So I can always be reached on Instagram, Facebook. That's probably going to be the fastest way, and then from there we can kind of go. But I love talking about, triathlon and just life in general and balance and fitness. It's my passion and I love to inspire and motivate people. So
Awesome. Very cool. Well, yeah, thanks again, Meg, and thanks for all our listeners. Thanks for being here and spending this time with us. We'll see you next time.